Welcome to Conversations. Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about how Donald Trump has upped the ante against India and raised the tariffs on India to 50%. This is unbelievable, unexpected. I did expect Donald Trump to raise the tariffs after India's quite strong statement came to his original tariffs of 25%. India responded by saying that the US was unreasonable and unjustified, and also that the US and Europe were indulging in double standards because even the Europeans were buying Russian oil, and so was the US buying Russian uranium and palladium, and there were other countries who were buying, but India was being solely targeted. And I think that statement also played a role. But I think the primary reason why Donald Trump has really upped the tariffs is because he's profoundly upset and frustrated that Putin is not responding to his overtures to bring about ceasefire. Donald Trump is under multiple pressures. He cannot just watch as Russia continues to destroy Ukraine, and so he wants to have a ceasefire. He thought that he could bring about a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine within 24 hours, but he has found that neither Ukraine is playing ball with him, neither are the Europeans, and neither is Russia. So many attempts, many dialogues later, Russia is still resisting. And so today, when Steve Witkoff, his envoy to Russia, went and met with Putin and met with him for 3.5 hours, and nothing happened. No ceasefire was announced. There doesn't seem to be any end to the war. And that has created a lot of tensions for Donald Trump. He's under great pressure to do something. He does not want to send money. He does not want to send weapons, because then the MAGA crowd will be up in arms. They already are very upset with the Epstein files scandal. They're also very upset with Donald Trump becoming basically from America first to Israel first, doing more for Israel than for America, going to war for Israel against Iran, and then trying to threaten Americans who are suffering from natural disasters, that if they don't pledge allegiance to Israel or if they boycott Israel, then American citizens will be exempted from American aid. I mean, this is treasonous. What Donald Trump's administration tried to do is to force Americans to pledge allegiance to a foreign country and say, we will not boycott Israel, even though my house has been drowned and I've been hit by an earthquake or some natural disaster. And so this is the extreme limit to which the pro-Israeli lobby is taking America to, so that America punishes American citizens to advance Israeli interest. All of that has upset the MAGA crowd. So the MAGA crowd is upset with Donald Trump on multiple levels. They're upset with his bill, the big beautiful bill, which undermines Medicare for a lot of Americans who are poor and who are his own constituency. They're upset with his war with Iran, his continuous Israel first policies, not America first. Number three, they are also upset that he's continuing to get involved with Ukraine. And he's getting away by saying, okay, we are not giving our money, we are getting the Europeans to bring the cash, and we are just selling our weapons. But nevertheless, it cannot go on indefinitely. So Donald Trump is frustrated that he cannot bring that war to an end, and he has picked what clearly in his mind is the weakest link in the Russian support system. It's not just India that is buying. India is the second biggest purchaser of Russian oil. The biggest is China. China's imports from Russia is about $130 billion. China's total trade with Russia last year was $240 billion, 4 times India's total trade with Russia, which was around $65, $68 billion. But there is European Union, which is buying gas as well as petroleum from Donald Trump, which is kind of what India is trying to say. The Europeans are being hypocritical. And then Turkey is buying, United Arab Emirates is buying, Belarus is buying. And so both Turkey and UAE are very close friends and allies of the US, but the US is not picking on any one of them, it's just picking on India. Then there's also this additional frustration that Donald Trump has with India, that India started negotiating the tariffs before anybody else. And so India, in fact, I wrote an article saying India is preemptively bending the knee to the US when Modi came to meet Donald Trump in February. he had already reduced tariffs on certain items of US imports from 150 to 75%. The tariffs that India imposes on some of America's exports in the range of 75%, 100%, 150%, that high tariffs, completely blocking US exports to India. And so India tried to reduce some of those exports in the hope that they would quickly get a deal with the US. But the deal negotiations have been going on. India is notoriously very slow in decision making. Its negotiations with the European Union have been going on for like God knows 5 years. Its negotiations with UK took nearly 3 years to bear fruit. And so Donald Trump wants results as quickly as possible, and so he's also frustrated. But I also think that in these long negotiations that the US has had with India, there have been many instances where the American negotiators may have briefed Donald Trump about the extent to which India prevents US exports coming to India. So India has not only trade barriers by tariffs, but there are non-tariff barriers too. And they are not just in the agricultural sector and the dairy sector, which India wants to protect, which is quite legitimate because if India opens its agriculture and dairy products to American exports, then there is an assumption that nearly 700 million people could lose their livelihood because 44% of India's labor force works in the agricultural sector. India's agricultural sector is not as competitive as the United States. And so American goods will be probably better and cheaper. And then there are cultural issues that American dairy products are from cattle which have been fed on non-vegetarian stuff, so it is a cultural problem. So there are a lot of issues on the Indian side why they cannot open both dairy and agriculture. But India can reduce its tariffs 100%. I don't understand why whiskey and motorcycles and high-end cars have to have such high tariffs. And there is no sense. It's not fair, and then they should not complain if they are imposing 100% tariffs on many of American goods. Then they have no leg to stand on if the U.S. decides to impose 25% tariffs and then a 25% penalty for dealing with Russia. If there is a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, that 25% will go away. But it does not look like that war is going to end anytime soon unless Ukraine were to completely surrender. And if India stands up and continues to buy Russian oil and China does it so, then Russia can fight for a year or two more. And Putin seems to think that eventually Donald Trump will walk away from the Russia-Ukraine war. J.D. Vance said as much. He said that we are going to try to bring about peace, and if it doesn't happen, then we will simply walk away from these wars because these are not American wars and America is not interested. And Trump has said repeatedly, uh, that this is not the case. That this is Biden's war, this is not his war, etc. So now India responds to Donald Trump by saying that Donald Trump, the United States and Europe are maintaining double standards. They are buying oil and natural gas and other things from Russia. They're continuing to trade with Russia, and then just asking India to end that is unfair, unreasonable, unjustified. And of course, they are clearly implying that the West is being hypocritical and maintaining double standards. Plus, they try to make an argument which I think is not actually, it will fall apart under scrutiny. For example, they say that initially the United States had encouraged India to buy Russian oil to stabilize the global market. That is correct. The former US ambassador to India, Garcetti, also confirmed that the US had encouraged India. But India's claim that because it's a poor country, it is in its own national interest to buy the cheapest energy that is available for it on the market is not entirely true because India is also reselling that. India is not just buying Russian oil at a discount and then giving it to poor Indians. India is buying that, refining it, and then exporting it to Europe and other places. They have sold $86 billion worth of refined Russian oil in different parts of the world, even I think to the United States. I think in 2023, even New York City was getting some petroleum products from India, which were originally based on Russian crude. So India is also profiting from this. So, and the biggest Indian refinery, Jamnagar, which is actually apparently the biggest refinery in the world, so which is owned by Mr. Ambani, and Mr. Ambani is making a lot of money. It seems that his net worth has gone up by 30% in the last 2 years because of the war. And all of that is because of the profits that the Ambanis are making by buying Russian oil at a discount and then selling it. In fact, now India's exports are comparable to that of Saudi Arabia, and India does not produce any oil at all. So Donald Trump is right in that sense that India is definitely profiteering. India could have made a deal with the US by doing certain things. For example, India should protect its agriculture and dairy products, but India can reduce the tariffs on all the other goods that the US is exporting to India. India can reduce the non-tariff barriers that it has to its market, so American service industries can operate in India, accountants, consulting services, universities, etc. Just as Britain is opening 6 universities in India, should Americans also should be allowed to open their campuses there and be able to repatriate profits. So instead of Indian students coming all the way to the US, American universities can go to India. So there are lots of barriers that India has lifted to keep American businesses out. They can drop those barriers. But not only that, India can, instead of spending $60 billion buying Russian oil, they can spend that $60 billion buying American energy and also buying more of American weapons. In fact, you can say that Donald Trump has thrown a gauntlet at India. It's a challenge. Either you're with us or you're with Russia. I mean, that is what Donald Trump is saying. Either you're with us or you are with Russia. And so that is a huge challenge. And for India, this has long-term strategic implications. In the past few years, India has been moving steadily towards the US. In fact, at one point, India's defense procurements were 70% dependent on Russia. That has now reduced to about 50%. I'm seeing your questions and your comments. Himanshu Prasad, welcome to Khanversations. Yes, once I finish my commentary, I will be happy to read your comments and respond to your questions shortly. So as far as the US was, India was concerned, it was already moving towards the West. India in 2023 was this. See, there are two institutional challenges to the West: SCO on the security front and BRICS in the broader economic front. And in both cases, in BRICS as well as in SCO, India had begun to undermine the Russian and Chinese agenda. India simply dropped de-dollarization as soon as Donald Trump threatened to impose 100% tariffs on countries which talk about de-dollarization. Russia and China have not abandoned their efforts towards de-dollarization. So India then decided to dilute BRICS and SCO to such a point that some of the observers on that were saying that India has become a liability for SCO and BRICS. Even in the Brazil summit of BRICS, where Xi Jinping and Putin did not show up, Modi had a chance to shine. And guess what does he do? In Brazil, he tries to weaken the condemnation of Israel. So instead of, while claiming to be the voice of the global South, Modi does not show up in Colombia, where countries of the global South got together to criticize Israel for the genocide in Gaza. Modi tells Putin this is not an era of war, but does not tell Israel and Netanyahu this is not an era of war, this is not an era of genocide. He's quiet. At the UN, he votes for Israel, while everybody in SCO and everybody in BRICS is criticizing Israel. India is defending Israel. Good. Go stand with Israel. Go stand with the US and Israel's allies. Why are you in BRICS and why are you in SCO? Can BRICS trust you now? Can SCO trust you now? And then suddenly Trump turns against India, and now India is running helter and skelter. It's hilarious to watch how there is now an unending traffic from India to China. Rajnath Singh goes for SCO summit. Okay, that is where he stabbed Iran in the back by once again being the only country not to condemn Israel for its attack. US and Israel violated the territory sovereignty of Iran by attacking it. India did not condemn it. So much for being part of BRICS or SCO. It should become basically a subordinate of Israel. And then India, the SCO retaliated by condemning what happened to the Jafar Express in Balochistan, but not even mentioning Pahalgam in their final statement. And then India refused to sign it. And so there was no final statement at the SCO Defense Ministers Conference. And then Dr. Jaishankar goes for the SCO's foreign ministers, and now Prime Minister Modi is heading towards BJP. Ajit Doval today is in Moscow. So Indians are running from one superpower to another, pillar to post. So where is the strategic autonomy that India talks about all the time? Jaishankar was one asked, are you in America's camp? Are you in China's camp? So he said in a very arrogant way that we have our own camp. Where is that camp? Where is India's camp? Donald Trump sends 2 tweets and 1 executive order, and India is running to China and running to Moscow, desperately trying to make sure that Putin comes to India they want to renew the India-Russia summit, which India had discouraged in the past. And now Modi is going for the SCO summit in the hope that Xi Jinping comes to India for the BRICS summit. Imagine if both Putin and Xi Jinping do not come to India, and India has the BRICS summit, and Narendra Modi is standing there with Lula. Donald Trump is going to go through the roof. He might even impose sanctions on the BRICS countries. Or Donald Trump or Narendra Modi will probably call Netanyahu and say, why don't you write the final statement for BRICS summit to make sure that America does not get upset? So India is in a very dire situation. I'm very sorry to say that they have misjudged India's strategic value to Donald Trump. In the past, American presidents valued geopolitics more than geoeconomics. So the India as a possible partner of the United States against China became very important to the US. And so they overlooked economic issues, the massive tariffs that India had already imposed on China, on the US, and they focused on just geopolitics and India's, Quad, participation in the Quad, etc. But Donald Trump is different. He does not focus on geopolitics as much. Geopolitics is a way to achieve geoeconomics. And he's primarily focused on US economy. And so for him, he's not going to sacrifice what he thinks is US economic interests for geopolitical purposes. He thinks if he can make an economic deal with China, then the geopolitics will take care of itself. Biden didn't think that way. Obama didn't think that way. They had realized that if China continues to become economically powerful, it's going to present a bigger and bigger geopolitical challenge to the United States. So they wanted India as a strategic partner. And India, even in Quad, India dragged its feet and made sure that the Quad didn't become an alliance. The Quad is such a mismatch. There are 4 countries in the Quad: India, US, Japan, and Australia, where Japan and Australia have military alliances and they are military partners of the United States. India is not. And so Joe Biden then got frustrated with Quad and moved and created the Squad. And the Squad has the same US, Australia, Japan, and Philippines instead of India, even though Philippines is not a substitute to India. It's a pretty small country, small economy. But Philippines also has a military alliance with the US. So militarily speaking now, the Squad becomes far more important balancer of China's growing military clout in East Asia and South Asia than India's Quad. And what is interesting is that now India is in a tough position. The statement that India has issued in response to Donald Trump is they just dropped Europe out of their previous statement and they just repeated the same statement that they had issued 2 days ago, making the same claim that this is unjustified and pointing out the double standards of the United States. Every country has double standards. Look at India's double standards. India tells Russia that this is not an era of war, does not tell Netanyahu this is an era of war. India says it is the voice of the global south, but votes with the global north. Everybody is worried about how people in Gaza are being starved to such an extent that even France and Canada and UK are moving to recognize Palestine as a way to put pressure on Israel to stop starving Palestinians. And what does India do? India sells rockets to Israel. So yeah, India has double standards of its own. So every country has double standards, and double standards basically means that you advocate certain principles. Then, when your interests kick in, you compromise the principles for your interests, which is what the US does, which is what every country does. For example, when I saw Russia's response to Donald Trump's pressure on India, I found it funny. Russia says it is against international law for a country to pressure another country not to trade with another country. So America pressuring India not to trade with Russia is against international law. This is coming from Putin, who is an internationally wanted criminal. There's an arrest warrant out for Putin, and he's talking about international law. It is hilarious, isn't it? So, yeah, that is a double standard. Putin doesn't respect international law. And he has violated international law in Chechnya. He violated international law in Syria, violated it in Africa, in many places. So yes, all countries do double standards. Just saying that the country is doing maintaining double standard is a meaningless diplomatic initiative. What needs to be done is what should we do? So the question now is, what can India do? I was listening to Shashi Tharoor this morning, and Shashi Tharoor says India should impose counter tariffs against the US. First of all, India, what is India going to say? We are going to increase tariffs from 75% to 100% on this, on 100% to 100 and something on this. It's just think how it is going to sound. And I can tell you this much, that the moment India imposes counter tariffs, Trump is going to raise the tariffs to 75%. Let me give you an example of how damaging this can be to the Indian economy. Number one, when Trump imposed 25% tariffs on India, this is not before he went to 50% today. The Economist, you can read it up in various Indian media itself. Their calculations was that number one, India's growth rate will shrink from 6.5 to 6.2. So India's economic growth is going to slow down by 0.3%. That is huge. It's not a small number, from 6.35 to 6.2. So if you look at all the predictions right now of India's growth for this year, it is at 6.2%. The second thing was that overall it was going to impact Indian economy by $30 billion. This was at 25%. If this 50% tariff stays, then India is going to become so uh, difficult for India that it is quite possible that some of India's exporters will have to lay off their workers, and it could increase unemployment in India because they will not be able to sell goods in the United States. Let me give you an example. This shirt that I'm wearing is a very expensive shirt, but it's made in Bangladesh. And so Bangladesh has only 20% tariffs. Pakistan has only 19% tariffs. So in the field of garment, for example, India with 50% tariffs, how is India going to compete with its own neighbors? And the same thing is going to happen in the electronics field. At 50% tariffs, right now the tariffs on China are 30%. On Vietnam, the deal is finalized 20%. Vietnam makes Apple's laptops and Apple's iPads for the US. iPhones for the US now, 40% or more are being made in India, and Apple hopes that by 2026, by next year, 100% of all American iPhones will come from India. But that was under the assumption that India would have a very low tariff rate. We all thought that India would get a 15% tariff, not 50%. So if you are CEO of Apple and you are thinking tariffs on India are 50%, tariffs on Vietnam are 20%, I have a bigger manufacturing operation in Vietnam. My entire operation is in China, where the tariffs are only 30% compared to India's 50%. Should I move my operations to India, invest $5 billion in the infrastructure, and then export goods to the US? Plus, Trump is also quite ticked off with Apple right now. He has actually said that American businesses should stop sending jobs to India and building factories in China. So if Apple invests in India, then it's going to get into bigger trouble. Now, it is quite possible that China and the US may not reach an agreement, and because China has also refused to stop buying Russian oil. Trump is quite ticked off, but he's unable to react to that. So if China and the US don't reach a trade agreement, then the American Secretary of Commerce or Treasury, Scott Bessent, was saying that the tariffs on China will be 84%. Then India begins to look good if the tariffs on China are 84%. But if the tariffs on China are 30, 35, or 40 even. But let me also give you a scenario which is very scary for India. Let us say that Trump imposes 100% tariffs on China, and you are the CEO of Apple, and the tariffs on India are 50%, the tariffs on China are 100%. What are you going to do? You know what the tariffs on Vietnam are? 20% for manufacturing, 40% for transshipment. So China can do transshipment via Vietnam and via Indonesia at a 10% discount. 10% is a very big margin. So China can send ships, all its goods to the US through Vietnam, paying a 40% tariff, and they will still be cheaper than India's 50%. So my recommendation to Prime Minister Modi is this. I know Modi is more interested in the Bihar election, and he's been using all this foreign policy as an image builder for him. 56-inch chest, we are a masculine policy, this is a multipolar world, we are a rising power, and all that rubbish to win votes at home. And this is going to hurt him domestically, and the opposition are really, really going to ramp it up. And all the slogans of that, if Modi is the prime minister, everything is possible. Well, this is also possible because Modi is this. Plus, he's running from helter to skelter, running for help to Moscow, running to help with Beijing. Literally, no other country has done that. You don't see Switzerland or anybody running to China, running to Moscow. EU went to Beijing and then came back, and they took 15% tariffs and promised $1.35 billion worth of investments and purchases from the US. So I think Modi should call Donald Trump, thank Donald Trump for his help in mediating the Operation Sindoor and ceasefire with Pakistan. Tell them that following Netanyahu, we are also, don't mention Pakistan, following Netanyahu, we are also going to sponsor a Nobel Prize for you. We are also going to support a Nobel Prize for you for making peace. And then negotiate the penalties down. And then the $60 billion that India is spending buying Russian oil, they should use that to buy American oil. And also promise that in the next 5 to 10 years, India will buy $40 billion of weapons. India is already buying drones, some military aircraft, not the F-35, but other aircrafts. India is buying other technology from the US. So they can say in the next 5-10 years, we will spend $40 billion more. And so Donald Trump can come out and say, okay, we have a deal with India. They're going to reduce tariffs on everything except agriculture and dairy. We understand why that is important. But India is also going to invest $100 billion in America. They're going to buy our oil. They're going to invest in our businesses. And so there it is. You have this deal. But if India runs away from this deal and tensions become very high, then don't think that China is going to treat India as an equal. Why will China do that? In fact, China will take advantage of the fact that India is in a desperate situation right now. China has a stranglehold on Russia because truly it's China and not India which is holding up the Russian economy. Not the trade between Russia and China is $240 billion, whereas between India and Russia it is just 65, 67. So Russia China trade is 4 times that of India Russia. So Russia is fully in China's camp. And China has done something magnificent in the last 3, 4 years. It has diversified its exports to such an extent that even though there are significant reduction in US imports of China, China is now the third biggest exporter to the US, below Canada, below Mexico and Canada. Before that, China was, I think, number one trading partner of the US very briefly. So both US and EU have been talking about de-risking, de-linking, China plus one, offshoring, friendshoring, nearshoring in Mexico. All of these slogans are all anti-China in the economic sense. So what did China do? In spite of reduction of import from Europe and the US, China had the best export year ever in 2024. Nearly $1 trillion of surplus in export trade surplus. How did China do that? By diversifying. It's now the biggest market for China is uh, ASEAN countries. This morning I was looking at India's exports. You should go and take a look at it. You will get an interesting insight. Every media report that you hear says that US is the biggest trading partner of India. That is not true. US India trade is around $131 billion in the last financial year, which means from April 2024 to March 2025, India's goods and merchandise trade with the US, we're not talking of services at all, merchandise trade with the US was $131 billion. And with China, it was $127 billion. So, based on this, everyone says the US is the biggest trading partner. But if you actually look at the top 20 trading partners of India, at I think number 12, you will see Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has a $26 billion trade with the US, with India. India exports about $6 billion to Hong Kong, imports 19 plus billion, about $20 billion. So India has a $26 billion trade with Hong Kong. Hong Kong is part of China. So you add Hong Kong and China, and you have a $155 billion trade with India for this Hong Kong China complex, which is $25 billion more than the US. And the India's trade deficit with China and Hong Kong is over $130 billion. As much as India trades with China, India has that much of a trade deficit with China, Hong Kong. So if India goes and sits in lap, China is going to say, all right, here is the document, good, now sign the Belt and Road Initiative. Is India going to sign the Belt and Road Initiative? India has been talking about China as if it is China's equal because it had America's backing under Biden. China is 4 times bigger than India in its economy and way more developed in terms of manufacturing, etc. So, will India become part of the Belt and Road Initiative? All the talk about sovereignty, etc. Is India going to forget about what happened in Galwan? We are not fully clear whether China has fully withdrawn or it still occupies certain parts of India in Galwan. So India is in a tough place. Donald Trump has thrown a challenge to India, like George Bush had thrown a challenge to Pakistan, saying either you're with us or you're against us. And Donald Trump is telling India either you're with America or you're with Russia, and is forcing India to choose. So today, Ajit Doval is in Moscow, and tomorrow or very soon, Modi is going to Beijing. That tells you something about India. No other country has been running from pillar to post. as India is. You didn't see Indonesia running to China after US imposed $42 billion, 42% tariffs on Indonesia. You didn't see anybody do that except India. Apparently, India needs a daddy in the international arena. This is something I used to say about Pakistan, that Pakistan needs a sponsor without which it cannot walk out alone. And now India is behaving as if it desperately needs one or the other superpower to back it. Plus, look at the balance of power in South Asia, how it has shifted. India now has the highest tariffs in the region, 50%. In the world, it is at the same level as Brazil. Brazil and India are both at 50-50%. Both are part of BRICS. So I think there's the anger that Donald Trump has shown towards BRICS is also part of that number. I thought at the most he will go to 30 or maximum 35%. It came as a shock to me this morning when I saw the figure of 25% additional tariffs. I mean, Trump has said that he's going to raise it significantly, but I never thought he would go to 50%. And then it occurred to me that he's also thinking of BRICS. And so he's put it on the same level as Brazil. But the deal with Brazil is entirely different. The US has a surplus towards Brazil. So Brazil exports only $43 billion worth of stuff to the US. US sends about $49 billion of stuff to China. So the US has a 6 point some billion-dollar surplus over Brazil and has a huge deficit with India. But nevertheless, it's at the same deal. Whereas in South Asia, India has 50%, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh 20% each, Pakistan 19% each. So in that sense, India seems to be the least favored nation in the region. So this is a very serious issue. It raises a lot of serious questions. As I said a couple of days ago, that there will be two tests about where India-US relations are. One would be the number that the tariff is going to be imposed. The good news is that these tariffs don't kick in until 27th of August. So they're not applicable now. So India has 21 days to negotiate that down to maybe, I don't know, 35%, 20, or go back to 25%, whatever. So India still has 21 days to make the deal, and India can't work at the slow pace that it has been working for the past 6 months. Japan, with a bigger trade portfolio, Japan's exports of cars alone is $150 billion to the US, more than the entire US-India trade. And they negotiated a deal much quickly, much faster than India. So India still has 21 days to finalize a bilateral agreement with the US. If they had finalized this deal before, then we would not be in this situation. Because India delayed it and then Trump got frustrated with Russia, and then we have this 25% extra. This 25% tariff is partly because Trump is not able to influence Putin, and he's unable to punish Putin. What is he going to do? What sanctions? There are more than enough sanctions already on Putin. So the only sanction that he has to attack Putin's economy is going through secondary sanctions against those who are helping its economy. And even then, he can't go after China because China can block exports of magnets and rare earth materials to the US, which the US desperately needs. So we are in a very precarious situation. That is one indicator what the number would be. And the second is that there's a Quad summit in September in India. Will Donald Trump come to India for the Quad? And if Donald Trump doesn't come to India for the Quad summit, will he send JD Vance? Will India be okay with it? Will India hold the Quad summit in September after all of these things? Let's assume that India retaliates in some way. I can guarantee you Trump will retaliate back and we'll be at 75%. Trump can do lots of other things. He can fully suspend visas for Indian students. He can completely stop H-1B visas, etc. There are lots of slightly higher paid Americans who are without jobs. So there can be lots of leverages that Donald Trump can pull. Uh, so we should see how Narendra Modi handles this whole situation. and what happened to the great friendship that he had had with Donald Trump. And that he has this charisma. Modi hai to mumkin hai. If there's Modi, there's a possibility. Well, we'll see what all of that happens soon going forward. Anyway, so this is the scenario. We will wait and see what India does. India's immediate response was just to give an edited version of the previous statement. You can actually see it's verbatim, literally the same statement, but slightly shorter. Stop talking about EU, just talks about the US. But it's the same thing, explanation as to why India is buying that, which is not entirely true. Like I said, India is not buying oil just for its domestic needs. India has been making profits. India has sold $86 billion worth of trade oil in the open market and at a very high profit. So we will see what happens going forward. Welcome, Ismail. He's a member of Khanversations. So is Himanshu. And thank you for joining Khanversations. Now I will read your comments and answer your questions. But those of you who are here new, if you've not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, etc. And for those of you who are based in India or understand Hindi, then you can see me discuss a lot of these issues in far more detail. I'm on Aaj Tak Radio, so you can hear the podcast, Paraku Nitin. So it's a more than 1 hour discussion of US-India relations in Hindi. I also just finished with Satya Hindi with Ashutosh, another 45-minute with 2 other very interesting commentators on this issue. So you can also watch those for those of you who are fluent in Hindi. And I will probably come back here again tonight if there is any further development to do another live show. Okay, so World Periscope. I'm afraid your knowledge is misplaced. India would not be impacted by these increases in tariff. This steps doesn't know. I don't know what you're talking about, World Periscope. Like I said, India's GDP growth has already been cut from 6.5 to 6.2 on the 25% tariffs. And it will be, if I'm not mistaken, if the 75% tariffs stayed for a year or the 50% tariffs stay for a year, it's quite possible India's growth rate could go below 6%. And India is going to lose at 25% tariff. India was going to stand to lose $30 billion worth of GDP in its economy. It is quite possible it will lose more now if that stands. India will have to now desperately look for other places to export its stuff and find newer markets. And there it's going to compete directly with China. And it won't have the geopolitical advantage that India had in Europe as well as in US. And I don't know to what extent Carney in Canada is ready to make positive relations with India after all the manner in which India reacted to Canada. So we will see what happens going forward. Himanshu, just a thought, such consequences arise when 2 egotistical leaders are at the helm of the world's richest and the most populous nation. Yes, you're true, but it is a fact, isn't it, Himanshu, that India does have very high tariffs on American goods. India does block America from exporting stuff to India, whereas India allows America to operate very freely in the US, and America has very little tariffs on India. So there is a profound imbalance, which other presidents chose to ignore because they thought India will be a strategic partner against China. India is refusing to do that. So if India can't be a military ally of the US against China, then what use is India to the US? That is what Donald Trump is thinking. And maybe because India had such a prolonged negotiation with the US, I think that Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick had many opportunities to brief Trump about the details of US India trade relations. And he must have been horrified at the imbalance of the whole deal. And that's why also I think he's very angry with India. He already was during the campaign. He kept referring to India as the king of tariffs, as the worst violator of the tariffs and stuff like that, even during the campaign before he won the elections. So I think he's zeroed in on this. Whoa, Periscope, multiple Indian-owned aircraft companies have placed the largest ever. Yeah, I know Indigo and Air India, like 500 billion and $600 billion. Why aren't they showing up on the trade? Plus, let me show you something. I did this small exercise where I said, who are the biggest exporters of commercial jets? And it's Boeing and but when you look at the orders of those Boeing jets, etc., you will find that both Boeing and Airbus have like 6,000, 8,000 pending orders that they cannot serve for 10 years. So even though Air India may have ordered 500 planes and Indigo 600, they haven't been made or sold to India yet. So they may show up 5 years from now, 10 years from now as imports of US imports. So right now they are not showing. So if you go and look at US exports to India in 2024, even though those orders were made in 2024, they don't show up. Otherwise, remember the deal was for like hundreds of billions of dollars. So the US would have a massive trade surplus over India. But US exports to India in 2024 were about $48 billion. That is all. So where are those jets? Hormone Quest, your commitment towards informing and teaching is really commendable. Thanks for investing your time and energy. And thank you, Hormone. It's people like you who give me the energy to go forward. Thank you very much. Ayush Jain, Professor Khan, thank you for analysis. I would like to know your views. What can Indian economy do to absorb these shocks? Is there a way out for India other than going down to Trump? Oh, that's a very difficult question. So I was listening to some of the ORF, which is a think tank in India. So some of them are saying this could be a blessing in disguise and forces India to reform. See, India, there's a lot of hype in India. Okay, so India talks only about two indicators, GDP, and it talks about growth rate. So India says, oh, we have become a $4 trillion economy. We are the fastest growing major economy. Look, 6.5% on $4 trillion. Multiply that and see 6 fours, 24 plus half, 26. That is $260 billion. That's it. So India's GDP at 6.5% growth rate will grow by $260 billion. But the US at $30 trillion with a 2% growth rate grows at $600 billion. So even though the US is growing at 2% and India is growing at 6.5%, India adds $260 billion to its economy, US adds $600 billion to its economy every year. That's why since 2021 until now, in the last 5.5 years, US has gone from 21 trillion to $30 trillion. $9 trillion. US has added two Indias and one Saudi Arabia to its economy in the last 5 years. So no one says truths like this in India. This channel of mine is blocked in India because of this reason, because I say things like this. Have you ever heard that the US has added two Indias and one Saudi Arabia to its economy in the last 5 years? China has added one India to its economy in the past 5 years, from 14 to 18.9 trillion dollars. It is only India which is bragging. Oh, we've become $4 trillion. We overtook Japan. Big deal. You are 1/5 of China, 1/8 of the US, 1/7 of the US. And then growth rates are not the only thing. Look at the per capita. The US is at $89,000 per capita. China is at $13,000. India is at 2,800 on the same level as Bangladesh. Look at Human Development Index. India is ranked like 130. There are 129 countries which are more developed than India. Where is the Viksit Bharat talk? Look at starvation ranking. Look at freedom of press rankings. So Indian media does not look at things critically, and so they are under the assumption that just because they have higher growth rates, they are doing very well. They're not doing as well as they think they are doing. Yes, it's growing fast, but if you open the dabba, open the pack, the Pandora's box, there are lots of crises. India, let me give you a simple developmental model. You move from the farm to the factory to the office. That is how development happens. So you first invest in agriculture, you become independent in agriculture, and then you invest in manufacturing, you take industrialization. So you have the agricultural independence or the agricultural revolution, the green revolution. Then you have the manufacturing revolution, and then you go into service industries. So you go from growing corn to making cars and planes and bombs and missiles, and then you go to doing AI and designing stuff. That is how every country has developed in the world. They've gone from agricultural to if you look at United Kingdom, 80% of the GDP of UK is services. 77% of the US economy is services. People make fun of the US. The US share of manufacturing is just 10%. But do you know how big the 10% of US manufacturing is? That's $3 trillion. US is the world's second biggest manufacturing country in the world. Let that sink in. India's total domestic production of everything is 2.7 trillion, and trade is about 1.2, 1.3. That makes it India a $4 trillion economy. India's manufacturing is 15%. That's all. So on $4 trillion, 15% is what? $600 billion worth of manufacturing. Whereas the US is $3 trillion. The US manufacturing is 5 times bigger than India. So India has not been able to move the manufacturing part, is not able, services 55, but agriculture is the only sector which is creating jobs in India today. So that's why India can't open its agriculture and dairy to the US. They will wipe out the jobs. I saw one estimate which said 700 million people will be impacted negatively if the India opens up its economy in the agriculture and dairy sector to the US. So India has to restructure its economy. It has to invest in manufacturing. It has to invest in services. So there's a book here called by Raghuram Rajan. Read this book. This is a former Indian professor. Look at it, Ashoka Modi. India is broken. He's a professor in Princeton. I did a show on this channel. You can see I did a show with him last year as to how he talks about it. He's an IMF economist who now teaches at Princeton University. There are lots of people who have been talking about these challenges that the Indian economy. I can't find Raghuram Rajan's book. I think it's over there, about how they need to think more of designing. So let me give you a quick example. Do you know that Apple, as the biggest company in the world, its market capitalization is just $3 trillion? Whereas Nvidia, which doesn't make anything, it's only a design company. It manufactures in China and Taiwan, mostly in Taiwan, its chips. Its capitalization has become bigger than Apple. Foxconn, which does actual manufacturing of Apple, is just $500 to $600 billion. So Raghuram Rajan says India, instead of going into manufacturing, should go into high-tech design, into AI, etc. So India needs to. The problem is India's advantage is also India's problem, which is the population. So India has a lot of young people, so it has what is called as the demographic dividend on its side. But then it also means that India has to create 1 crore jobs every year because of this huge population. So India needs to, I'm going to try and invite a couple of economists. Hopefully next week I have a lot of commitment for Saturday. I have 2 lectures to give on Saturday, both on India. So maybe Sunday or Monday I will bring in 2 prominent economists and try to answer the question that Ayush Jain is asking. How can India change its economic strategies to cope with these challenges? V.K. Gupta, Professor, you talk of Bharat making profit selling refined products in the open market, but are you ignoring that the buyers are European and American companies? No, I'm not ignoring that. I was looking at the exports. Netherlands was the biggest importer, but Netherlands is a very weird country. So if you go and look at foreign direct investments, Netherlands is a big investor in India. Netherlands is a big investor in Kazakhstan. So I did a show with somebody, a professor from Kazakhstan, on conversations last year or about a year and a half ago, and I asked him, "Why does Netherlands invest in Kazakhstan?" And he started laughing. He said, "It's not Netherlands; it's Kazakh businessmen, the corrupt businessmen in Kazakhstan who have smuggled their money laundered it away, and then they open companies in Netherlands, and it's called roundabouting, I think, rounding. Like, the biggest investor in India is Mauritius. The total amount of investments from Mauritius are $250 billion in India. Out of the $1 trillion foreign direct investments that India has got lifetime, 25% come from Mauritius. How is that possible? Mauritius' total GDP is just 15 billion per year. So it is like if it invests all of its GDP. So what is happening is that Indian businessmen like Gautam Adani and Ambani, etc., they're taking money to Mauritius, then investing them back in India, and getting tax exemptions and other benefits. Netherlands is also one of such companies. So I'm suspecting that I don't have any evidence except the fact that Netherlands is importing $14 billion worth of Indian oil, which it didn't do before the war started. Okay, so if you look at that, you will find that I think I have the charts. I would have shown it to you. But if you look at that, it is quite possible that the exporter of Indian oil to Netherlands is also Ambani, and the importer is also Ambani. And then he's redistributing the oil in different places in Europe. So yes, American companies, even New York was importing it. The oil, because at that time it was classified as under the Biden administration, it was classified as Indian oil and not Russian oil. There was this American trade, some woman, I forget her name. She was not very high ranked, but she was speaking, I think, at the Ricina dialogue, and where she said that no, once it comes here, the source country becomes India because you have refined the oil. But I think Donald Trump is completely frustrated that he's not able to impose its will on Putin. It does not have any leverage. What America is importing directly from Russia, the palladium and uranium, is necessary and very small in volume, about $2 billion. That's it. There's no trade between America and US. All American companies came back within the first year itself. You remember 1,000 brands left Russia within a few months. So he's very frustrated. He's not able to do it. The question is, why didn't he impose tariffs on Turkey, which is the third biggest importer of gas and oil from Russia? So China has leverage against India. So I think the reason why is this, because none of them is reselling. China is buying oil but not making profit on it by reselling on the market. Neither is Turkey doing that, and neither are European Union. They're consuming it for themselves. But India is different. If India was just using all of the oil, then I don't think Donald Trump would be able to make an argument as strongly as he's making right now. Himanshu, a very interesting question. Are global alliances becoming obsolete? No. India is become a mouthpiece for Israel everywhere. India scuttled the SCO resolution against Israel. It stabbed Iran in the back. India has become a pain in the ass for BRICS as well as SCO. I was doing a simulation on BRICS and SCO in one of my classes. And so I give roles to all my students and say, you are this, you are this. So I had one of my the smartest student in my class, I made him India. I said, you're going to be Narendra Modi. So he said, oh my God, you're making me the mole. I said, what do you mean? He says, India is America's mole in BRICS. And in SCO, they are pushing Israeli and Indian agenda. So if an undergraduate student who is like 20 years old, my foreign policy class, so yeah, he's 21, 22, they're usually seniors who take it. It's a very advanced seminar on US foreign policy. If that kid can get the fact that India is in BRICS and SCO and advancing Israeli and American interests rather than the interests of the global South. So those are international alliances. Look at Pakistan, it is sitting pretty. India is running between Beijing and Washington looking for a daddy in the international system to sponsor it. India talks so much about strategic autonomy. We are independent. We are this. We are that. Then just stand independently. Why are you immediately running to China? Today, Ajit Doval is in Moscow. Tomorrow, Modi is going all the way to Beijing. Why? Stand up and just deal with the situation alone. Whereas Pakistan now has two superpowers who are both being quite benign to us. I mean, China proves its friendship during Operation Sindhu, there's no doubt. And even after that, in every diplomatic forum where India attacked Pakistan, China voted with Pakistan, defended it in FATF, at the UN Security Council, every international forum, World Bank, IMF, everywhere China was supporting Pakistan. And now Donald Trump is like, oh, Asim Munir is my latest buddy. And, and look at it, it got the best deal in South Asia, 19%. So, yes, there are alliances, new alliances that Trump is forming, which are very self serving and weak. But the big alliances Donald Trump does not like. NATO, he did not leave NATO in spite of all his rhetoric. Keep that in mind. He keeps attacking European Union, but keeps dealing with European Union too. So America does not want to leave these alliances. America wants to basically make Europe more subordinate to it than it already is. Basically, they want Europe to be like a slave of America with zero strategic autonomy. And that is what Donald Trump is trying to say, put Europe in its place, so to speak. The same with Japan, the same with South Korea. These are all signatory and allies that the US has promised to protect if they are attacked. Donald Trump has not withdrawn from any military alliance to this day. And then it went and fought for Israel. That is, again, the most powerful US alliance. So, no, alliances are not getting weak. They are just, Donald Trump is treating them differently. His style of diplomacy and negotiations are radically different from the previous American presidents. So that's why he's giving that impression. I agree with you, VK Gupta. Thank you very much. Saxena Saab, relative saving house India's 50%, that much more wealth than Canada's 35% or Switzerland's. Oh, Switzerland. That was so amazing. I just, you know, so the first thing I do when I get up in the morning these days is to check my WhatsApp if there are some interviews. This morning it was just blasting. I've been on, like I said, on so many different shows. But and the second thing is I have a Google News designed just for me. So the first thing I see is 39% on Switzerland. And it was very funny. Switzerland has zero tariffs on American goods. So the Swiss people thought that Trump is just not going to do anything for them. We are okay. They simply assumed they were okay, and they didn't do anything. They did not even reach out to the U.S. government until now. And the didn't realize it that they have a massive trade surplus with the US. I think 30, 38, 39% surplus. Trump is reacting to both tariffs and deficits. And he was looking at Switzerland and saying, oh, why do we have so much deficits with Switzerland? And he imposed 39%. So the 39% is not a punishment or anything. It is like saying, come on, get your ass over here and let's negotiate. That's what it means. And it worked. Yesterday, the New York Times has a very interesting article that perhaps you should read, Gupta. It compares India's approach of standing up to Trump with its, the Ministry of External Affairs statement saying you are being hypocritical and double standards, etc. And Switzerland's approach. The Switzerland has come running, and Switzerland wants the 15% deal that European Union got. I have a feeling that what's going to happen is Switzerland is going to invest some maybe $50 billion in the US, and it will get a 15% deal and go away. So that is with regards to Switzerland. With regards to Canada, see, these 35% tariffs on Canada is not across the board. So there is something called US, Canada, Mexico deal, which used to be NAFTA that Clinton signed. And then Trump, in his first term, I think 2019, he restructured NAFTA one What we have now is called USCA, USA, Canada, Mexico deal. It's basically NAFTA 2.0. So all the goods that are under NAFTA 2.0, Donald Trump has not impacted that, except aluminum and copper. Everything that he invokes, it says 232, Section 232 under national security. All of only that. That means he has revised the NAFTA 2.0 arrangement. So all the things that is under NAFTA 2.0 is not impacted by Trump's tariffs, this 35%. This 35% is on all the stuff that was not covered by the, the NAFTA deal. And the automobile is still at 25%. And that is the most integrated. Apparently, a car crosses border 19 times. It crosses the border from Canada into US, US into Mexico, Mexico back into the US, US into Canada. So a car goes 19 times before it becomes a car. So the integrated manufacturing of American automobiles between US, Canada, and Mexico is so complicated that if you keep putting 35% tariffs every time they cross the border, then it'll go what? 350 minus 35, so 315% tariffs. Not really, it's not going to work. They have to figure it out. Once they start executing it, there are going to be such complexities. And Donald Trump has done another stupid thing. He's fired a lot of federal employees, right? His Doge has reduced the size of everything. So where are the people and the staff people who are going to be able to do all this math and keep track of all the goods that are coming in and going out of the US? But that's why Mexico doesn't look worried. If you notice, he has put the same amount of tariffs on Mexico. So the Mexican president, she gave a very good speech. She's a PhD, and I mean, in Mark Carney used to be the president of the Bank of London, I think. So he's also a very good economist. So they both understand this. And America is also hurting, by the way. I was just reading yesterday that America gets $20 billion in tourism from Canada, and Canadians are now boycotting the US. So we are going to lose about 10 to 15 or maybe even $20 billion in just tourism from Canada. And these are the states in the north and Florida are going to suffer significantly. So there are going to be a lot of losses on the US side because of the Canada deal. But with Canada, the 35% is going to hurt only that which is not covered by NAFTA 2.0. Aditya. Aditya, this is summer. This is 2:30 now, and I have not had breakfast yet. So that's okay. It's like intermittent fasting, but this is an important issue I want to. Let me give you an example. This channel of mine is blocked in India, but I have another channel. So when the first statement was issued by India, everybody was saying India retaliates, India expands, etc., etc. But I did a show saying the war of words between India and Trump and India, war of words. You could have seen that the show was it was called Trump and India in War of Words. And then after I had posted this video on both my channels, I noticed that India Today, NDTV, lots of other mainstream medias in India were now using that phrase, war of words between India. So I feel as if I'm having an impact. And then because of that video of mine, I'm getting so I stay here in Delaware and I'm discussing policy in India. I'm on most of their major channels. I was supposed to be even on Arnab Goswami yesterday. Something happened and we could not manage it because I sleep late and I get up late. So sometimes I miss certain opportunities which require early morning. Like if you want me at 10 a.m. my time, you should tell me in the night. So I sleep a little early, or at least I get up early for the show. So for me, as a professor who is interested in having his ideas explored, I don't make money, but it is a satisfaction. Otherwise, I would feel irrelevant to the world. Things are happening in the world, and I'm watching reels on Facebook or sleeping or think, no, I feel alive. I feel connected. I just did a live show on my other channel. I had 6,000 people watching me live from India on that show. I'm happy that I did something useful. Education is the highest form of service. So I feel that I have educated. I don't know whether you guys appreciate what I'm doing or not, but I can guarantee you, you have heard so many new things that you're not going to hear on any mainstream Indian or US channel. Uh, because I look at these things in a much deeper sense. So far, even AI has not caught up. Go and try to get a summary from anybody. I don't, and you will not get the in-depth analysis that I've provided on this channel. Ismail is the biggest supporter of conversations. Sir, India only exports about 2 to 3% of GDP to the US, though. Why get so worked up for that? Oh, no, no, no. So the India's total exports to the US are $85 billion. Okay, you are right. India's total exports of goods and services are about $300 billion. But it will impact by 30%, $30 billion, sorry, $30 billion. So it is going to reduce India's GDP. It will reduce India's growth rate by 0.3%. But there are lots of other benefits with the US that India gets access to technology. So they can't mess up this relationship because Modi is under big pressure. You know, he says, I have a 56-inch chest and this and that. We stand up for our interests. So he's under pressure to respond. Today, Shashi Tharoor was saying India will come up with retaliatory tariffs. I was listening to him. I thought that was a stupid thing to say because if you retaliate to Donald Trump, he's going to raise it to 75%. India is going to become at all not competitive. India cannot afford to lose this, and it has a ripple effect on other industries. Can you imagine if India's pharmaceutical industry loses $10 billion worth of exports? It will have to fire people, etc., and then it will become less competitive elsewhere. So it is important, but US is the biggest trading partner, and the US of all the top 10 trading partners, India has a trade surplus only with the US, and it has trade deficit with everybody. So that is why also the US is very important to India. Rohit is also a member and supports conversations. Thank you, Rohit. Hope you are well, sir. Your voice sounds under weather. Do you think Trump is using today's announcement as a leverage for negotiation? I think you are right about that because if you look at Trump's actual statement, I don't know whether I showed you. This is the White House's statement that issued today, and let me see if you are able to see. So if you look here, it says. At the bottom of the first paragraph, it says he's imposing an additional 25% tariff on imports from India effective August 27 due to India's direct or indirect importation of Russian Federation oil. So basically, what he has done is he has given India 21 days. So India has until August 21st to appeal, to come back and negotiate with India, or at least decide. I was reading as to how some of India's refineries have now retooled to refine Russian crude oil. So they will not be automatically be able to retool themselves instantaneously to bring in Iraqi or Saudi or UAE oil, the other big import sources of Indian oil for India, and then immediately start refining them. It's not possible. So even if India agrees to transition away from Russia, it will take time. And already ships must have sailed. India is buying what, $2 billion, 2 million barrels worth of oil every day. So already ships are sailing, which will reach India maybe September, October. So what are you going to do with them? You turn them around. So the transition is not that easily possible. Like I was saying, Rohit, that's my answer to your second question. Also, the transition is not going to be that easy and quick. Oh yes, but the problem is that that's not that big a problem, Rohit, because the the U.S. trade negotiators all available to India anytime. Today, I spoke to a scholar in Bangladesh. It's been a year since changes happened, so I was trying to arrange an interview with him. So, sometime tomorrow, I will post my discussion of how Bangladesh has changed in the last 1 year. But I also asked him as to how did Bangladesh negotiate with the US, and it was very interesting to see because Bangladesh opened its agricultural sector and is importing cotton like Pakistan from the US. And India stopped selling Pakistan. So India kind of embargoed Bangladesh. India used to sell cotton to Bangladesh. And then Bangladesh, 80% of Bangladesh exports are garments. So he was saying that Bangladesh has started shifting towards China for importing cotton, but now it shifted to the US. And China was quite supportive of that. So, so in that sense, you can say that all of that happened because the Bangladeshi delegation went to China and came to the US and sorted it out. So it's not that the ambassador is the main negotiator. The power is in the hand of Scott Bessent more than anybody else, and Howard Lutnick and Greer, James Greer or James Greer. He gave an interview on Sunday to Meet America. You should watch it. He's very clear. He seems to know what he's doing. I found him to be the most competent, the main negotiator, the chief negotiator in chief. His name is, I think, Greer is his last name. I saw him only once. John or Jim Greer, his name is the negotiator. So he's very good. If you remember, that uh, he's he was the Jamison Greer. That is the guy's name, Jamison Greer. So uh, Jamison Greer was the guy, JG, that Pete Hexet was trying to add to his WhatsApp discussion. The Mike, the guy who disappeared. Remember the very pro-India guy who was the first national security advisor of Donald Trump. So that guy, I even forgot his name. He was trying to add Jamison Greer to the WhatsApp discussion, and he ended up adding Goldstein to it, who was the editor of the Atlantic Monthly. So anyway, Jamison Greer is a very competent guy. So the Bangladeshis met with him, made the deal, and everybody who was meeting these three people in the lead. Then they go to Trump, and if there's a decision point, and Trump is taking the decision very quickly. And then Piyush Goyal has been in touch with all three of these people for the last 6 months, and Modi is supposed to be a very good friend of Donald Trump. I don't know why Modi has not picked up his phone and negotiated with Trump directly. They could have solved this problem long ago. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching Khanversations, and thank you for all of your support. Rohit, SBS was also here this morning, and Ismail, members of Khanversations, Himanshu Prasad, all of you, thank you very much. And everybody else, please minimum subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, share this video with others, but also consider becoming a member of Khanversations. We have regular Zoom conferences. I get a lot of ideas from members. We interact quite a bit. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. And if some major developments happen, expect to see me live tonight again. So anyway, thank you very much. Bye.